Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Vic's Garage. Today we're here with my Chrysler Town and Country 2012. I'm getting the code P0128, which is the thermostat. So just a little background, last fall, winter, this code started to appear and it clearly only comes up during the colder months. So as the spring rolled around, the code went away on its own and I didn't bother repairing it. I didn't want to get into it in the winter last year to do that outside. So it cleared up over the summer months. Well, now we're getting to fall this year and it's starting to get cold again. And we've had a couple days where the weather dipped down in the mornings and P0128 appeared again. So we're gonna go through this. We're gonna replace it before it gets too cold out here. I'm gonna show you all the steps to replacing this thermostat and clearing the code. So without further ado, let's get started on the repair. Okay, so first thing you can do when doing this repair is get yourself your drain pan. And at the bottom right end side of your radiator, you'll see there's the reservoir, and just below that is the drain plug. Now, I went to do this on mine, and the drain plug, which looks like this, was already broken. I literally just touched it and it fell off. So I don't know if someone tried to drain this rad before and broke it off, but yeah, it's broken. So I can't really drain this easily. I'm not getting into that on repairing that plug. They do sell replacements. But the first thing, if I were doing this and I had the ability to do so, is you can drain about 1 liter or maybe a bit more of coolant into a pan. So you put the pan under that, open the plug and drain that out. And that'll make your mess a lot less for when you actually disconnect your thermostat housing. So this is the main rad hose. You follow this around and it comes down to here. And you can see there's your thermostat housing on the passenger side of the motor. All right, so the drain plug's on the driver's side and the thermostat housing's on the passenger side. There's 2 bolts on this, which we'll get into removing. A lot of people will just disconnect this, tie it off to the side, and remove the air box. I think I got enough room to get in here and just remove this without doing all that. So we're going to attempt that, but if you want more space, it's only a couple bolts. Remove this, tie it off to the side. This lifts basically right out. Undo this, the clamp, and then you have a lot of room to work in here. But I'm just going to get at it. We're going to see, and if I have to, I'll remove this stuff. So let's attempt it first. 2 bolts and get on that. Okay, so we're up top now. My vehicle's parked on a bit of a slant right now. So whatever coolant's at the top of this rad is going to be, you know, more leaning towards here. It might drain a little bit more than I would normally. You don't really need to clamp this hose because if you really think about it, there's not going to be a ton of coolant up here. But I put a clamp on this hose just to minimize what might get lost. We're going to open up the rad cap. We're going to have to get that done anyways. Okay. So, like I said, this isn't necessarily required, but I'm going to do that. I've got my catch pan underneath. It's probably going to completely miss that, as what always happens. Okay, so the first thing I got to do is remove the clamp. Right here, you'll see there's a clamp. Take the hose off the housing for the thermostat. I've always had experience that, my experiences have always been it's easier to remove the hose while this is clamped in, and you have something to pull against. So I'm going to use a pair of pliers, clamp it, slide the clamp back, and then wiggle the hose off. If you have they have proper hose release clamps that lock. Sure, they're great. I don't have those, so I'm just gonna use a pair of pliers. We're gonna work that off and get started in the next step. Okay, and there you go. Let's get that to focus. You can see where the clamp was and where it is now. So I basically had my hands on this side and this side with the pliers, and then just wiggle it, slide it back. So as always, technology failed here, my microphone cut out, but there's no easy way to do this. So what I did was just take a screwdriver at the end of the hose to kind of break the seal, because you'll have like calcium, whatever, sort of buildup that'll hold that hose on. Then just grab it, twist, wiggle, pull, do what you got to do. And this is going to be the hardest part of the whole job, but just keep working that hose and it will come off. Hopefully you put your catch basin at the right spot and you don't get coolant all over the driveway. So now that the hose is removed, use your 10mm socket and remove the first bolt on the top. They're not overly tight, so once you crack it, you can probably quickly do this with your hands. The second bolt, you'll see, Here's the air valve to release the air. Just follow it around to the bottom and you'll feel another bolt on the bottom, another 10 mil bolt. You can hear all that coolant draining, so if you can drain a little bit of coolant before you do this, it's probably a good idea. Obviously, like I showed you, I can't. Make sure you remove the gasket. So there's the old, and here's the gasket. So here's my old one here. When I pulled it off, like I said, the gasket didn't come with it. So just make sure you feel for it, because you can't stack two gaskets. It's gonna leak everywhere. Here's a new one. Gasket's already in place. I'm just gonna put it on. But before I do, this is the air valve. I'm gonna crack this just to leave a little bit open. So that way, as I fill it, I keep an eye on this and we'll see the coolant will eventually start coming out. And that's when you know you've got most of the air out of the system. So you just leave this cracked, start pouring it in, and then we're gonna watch the air and a little bit of coolant come out. When you start seeing like a steady flow of coolant, we'll just tighten that back down. So let's get this one back, this one here installed. There you can see the hose clamp essentially just slid up to where it was before. Hose up against the stops on the thermostat housing. Okay, so the next step is, like I said, you want to make sure you have that little screw down there, just a couple turns loosened. This one all the way in here, the one on the valve or the thermostat housing. So once that's loosened off a bit, a couple turns, we'll start adding the appropriate coolant. So it's the oat coolant. It's probably going to be colored orange. You'll find it either at Chrysler or whatever your auto parts store. So we'll start adding it in, and we're going to watch for coolant to start coming out of there, and at a slow but kind of steady stream, then we know most of the air is out of the system. And because I couldn't drain this a bit, I probably lost more coolant than I needed. But you can see it's starting to come out of there a bit. There was a couple drops. And now it looks like it's got a bit of a steady flow. So I am going to tighten that down. And again, don't over tighten it, it's just plastic. And then I'll continue to add coolant to the radiator. And obviously there's still air in the system. You see it's burping up, but we'll just let it go. I'll top it up a bit more. Okay, so now that the system seems to be full, we're going to start the car. We're going to let it run for a bit, let it circulate. If there's any more air bubbles and pockets, it'll burp those up a bit. And then we'll top it up if we need to, close off the system, and then take it for a drive. Okay, so back in the car. Now, if your check engine light is on, you can clear with the code reader. You can use something like the Blue Driver that I did a review on, or whatever other code reader you have. Or this is one of those codes, the P0128, that will clear itself while driving. So just drive, it will go away on its own. The other thing you do, just crank your heater system for a bit, let it all circulate, because remember your cooling system goes through the heater core and stuff like that. So just crank up the heat, drive it for a few minutes, and see if the code clears. If not, give it a couple days. It'll probably clear on its own. Then after taking it for your quick little test drive, just come back under the hood, give it a quick inspection, see any signs of leaking. Looks all good to me, and that's it. You've replaced your thermostat on your Chrysler Town & Country or Dodge Caravan. All right, everyone, and that's it. Simple, easy job to do. Replace the thermostat on a Town & Country or Dodge Caravan. Like I said, inspect it afterwards, make sure there's no leaks, drive it for a bit, keep an eye on the thermostat, because if you get any like wild swings in temperature, spikes up, you might have some air trapped in the system, and you have to deal with that. But it's a pretty simple job. If you find it tight in that space, you can unbolt the power fluid or power steering fluid and just move it. You don't have to actually disconnect it. Just take the nut off that holds it, move it off the side, tie it off, take the air box out, and it'll give you more room. As you saw, I was able to do it. It's a little tight. I don't like disassembling things I don't have to. So I was able to work in there and just work around the things, and it didn't take me long. I maybe spent an hour doing this job. That's it for this one. If you guys enjoyed it, as always, found it helpful, like, subscribe, share it, and I'll see you at the next one. Take it easy.